All right, my guest today is Dennis Buchheim. Dennis has been in the digital media industry for over 20 years and has done the rounds of all the major players. He has worked at Yahoo multiple times. He has worked at Microsoft. He's worked at Meta, and he's also the former head of the IAB Tech Lab. And for full disclosure, Dennis and I have worked at multiple companies together on the same team, and at least one time when he was my manager. So Dennis, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, James. It's great to be with you and good to be just working with you a bit again in these interesting times. Lots we can do together.
Always interesting times. So let's talk a little bit about the industry. I've heard you and your colleagues at Think Medium use the phrase healthy ecosystem for digital advertising. What are the key components of that healthy ecosystem for digital advertising, and how do you think about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is not a one-size-fits-all answer to that, obviously, but I think fair to say we look at it in terms of a number of prerequisites to what can enable a healthy ecosystem, and what's required as a baseline, and almost in terms of behaviors across the ecosystem. And I think there's a short list maybe of being aware and curious, right? Every constituent in the ecosystem needs to have that awareness of policy considerations, technology considerations, what's evolving in terms of different solutions, challenges, all of that. So awareness is one piece, I think. That sort of leads to a natural second piece of understanding the goals of each constituent, like not just understanding your own goals, but what are your partners' goals? What are your vendors' goals? What is an advertiser's goals versus a publisher's goals? And at a fundamental level, understanding that we all sort of exist in the ecosystem to do some combination of enabling the sale of products and services by advertisers, or obviously funding content and services very significantly in my mind from publishers and other service providers. So that sort of understanding of each other's goals is critical. And that, again, I think sort of naturally leads to, okay, I'm aware of what's going on. I understand your goals. Now, when I act, am I acting transparently? Am I being accountable? There's a lot, those are loaded words, transparency and accountability, but I think both tremendously important. And then looking for the opportunities to work together, collaboration as that next piece, to solve some of the biggest problems that absolutely I would claim cannot be solved by any one constituent, even the most powerful constituents in the ecosystem, which kind of also acknowledges that you can't really pass the buck. You can't think somebody else is going to solve it for you. Right. So I think in some sense with those prerequisites and behaviors in mind, you can shift more to, okay, so what are we solving for? And that's where, we think about, I think, medium privacy and data, safety and efficiency, and can certainly talk more about how those are kind of building blocks of what we see as a healthy ecosystem.
Well, let's get into each of those, because you've defined at Think Medium that those are your stated priorities: privacy and data, safety, efficiency. How do you define each of these areas, and why do you think these are the most important things to focus on right now?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think they're all existential, right? It's sort of, self-definitional there, but they're existential to a healthy ads ecosystem and a healthy media ecosystem. If you imagine an ecosystem without any controls for privacy, obviously that cannot be successful anymore. Without any controls for safety for consumers or even brands, that cannot be successful and sustainable. And then inefficiency is a really interesting one that that I think a lot of businesses naturally want to drive to more efficiency. But in terms of just a healthy ecosystem as a whole, there are interoperability considerations around efficiency, and there are even eco-sustainability considerations that fall into efficiency. So I think a lot of important characteristics of each of those areas that kind of ladder up to a healthy ecosystem. But enumerating really quickly, privacy and data, we think about consumer privacy policies, data strategy, data protection and security. And then for safety, we think about it in terms of brand safety, consumer safety, and how do we enable sort of overall industry level safety, and where everybody is playing the role that they need to sustain that. And then finally, for efficiency as a third pillar, it's business and operational efficiency, technological efficiency. What am I doing with tools and technologies? And then finally, ecological efficiency, which has a lot to do with even the supply chain and the partners you choose, obviously. So there's another, I think, important component to sustaining a healthy ecosystem.
Got it. So when you lay things out like that, it's pretty hard to argue that these are all important. Where the rubber really meets the road is in terms of what you have to do differently. And to be blunt, some people certainly view the stated priorities, or safety, privacy, data, as headwinds to their revenue growth and to their profitability. And certainly from my days on the publisher side, when you get told that you need to embark on another round of safety and security, privacy initiatives, at times it can be hard to get excited. So what's your response to those publishers or other industry participants? And how do you turn the conversation to make them see it as an opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, and it gets to some of the challenges that we might talk about later, and like how do you motivate a company to make changes in the short term, the medium term, and the longer term, right? And kind of understand that some of the problems that they need to solve for are not overnight solutions, right? So making progress gradually, I think is one way to talk about it. So it's not okay, we're going to do everything as today is the privacy initiative, or this quarter is the privacy initiative, and that's what we need to do. It needs to be something that's more foundational, and I think kind of built into day-to-day practices. So some of it is just foundational. You making the case that you must do it from an existential standpoint, but then you can flip it around, I think, in a lot of cases and say, well, is there competitive advantage to be gained? Is there innovation to be achieved in taking advantage of what's shifting from a privacy standpoint? If you think about it as consumer privacy, which is obviously critical, that sounds like a tax. Sounds terrible to say that, but it kind of sounds like a tax, right? If you flip that around and say, well, okay, I'm a brand or I'm a publisher, and I'm increasingly relying on my first-party data to fuel a successful advertising business in the context of all of the privacy-driven changes that are happening, then maybe it's not actually like directly about privacy for your business. It's indirectly about privacy. What it's really about is data protection, in a sense, right? Making sure that you have control over and knowledge of where your data is being used, how it's being used, how is it encrypted, literally, things like that. So I think there's real opportunity to kind of turn some of these things on their heads, and safety, thinking about it not as a tax, but as something that is enabling consumers and brands to do more business with you, to engage more with you. Some of it is just, I think, in how it's positioned. And as I mentioned before, I think efficiency is more naturally like in the crosshairs of what a business wants to solve for, just on an ongoing foundational basis. So I think privacy and safety have a little more of that headwind challenge, like you mentioned, but painting some of it as foundational and ongoing, and then finding the opportunities for innovation where you can really create some advantage or protect your assets. You can create whole new businesses, of course, if you're an ad tech company, right? It's that you can create an entire new solution set, based on how data is managed, a whole new company, right, based on how data is managed. So there's definitely opportunity there, and I think that's one way to turn it around. But it's a little bit of a give and take. There is an aspect of the foundational must do, but there's definitely opportunity for innovation and differentiation.
What is something that most people get wrong or don't understand sufficiently deeply in our industry right now?
I think my answer to that probably has not changed for the last couple or few years, honestly, that there's this interplay between privacy laws and regulations, increasingly on a global basis, right? It really started with GDPR in Europe, but obviously is much more global than that now. But privacy policies and regulations, platform policies, Apple and Google most notably as key platforms, and the policies that they've set around data and privacy and consent and all of that, opt-in, opt-out, and the urgency of having to deal with these things and how foundationally disruptive they will be over time. I think there's been an ability to kind of squeeze the balloon a bit over the past couple of years to say, oh, okay, Safari doesn't support what I need in terms of data because third-party cookies aren't there, so I'm going to shift more to Chrome, or iOS doesn't support as much, so I'm going to shift more to Android, or the growth of CTV has actually, I think, masked an enormous amount of change on the privacy side, right? I can shift spend to CTV. There's been a way to kind of almost ignore the data related changes that have happened in the past few years, and that's coming to a screeching halt. But still, I think a good number of companies don't see the tunnel we're in and that the train is coming, and it's a really critical time to start to take action, because these shifts will happen relatively quickly in 2024 in particular. But responding to them and making sure your business is durable in the face of these changes is not going to happen quickly, right? It is going to shift how all of your partners work. If you're a brand, an agency, a publisher, it's going to have to shift how you manage a good chunk of your business on a global scale. And I just think the last minute nature of the short-term focus, understandably in macroeconomically challenging times, but the short-term focus of a lot of companies has really hindered the willingness and the willingness to prioritize the shifts. And we saw that with GDPR when I was at IAB Tech Lab, and we co-launched the transparency and consent framework. Everyone waited till the last minute to adopt, till May 25th, 2018, when GDPR went live. Things like that were just very last minute. We've seen it with Safari and iOS. We'll see it with Chrome and Android. We'll see it, as TV evolves, I think. And we're starting to see some of the more innovative, savvy companies look at, frankly, subscription options, right? And then also, of course, look at ways to do things in a more privacy secure way.
Let me ask you a question by making a statement that may be somewhat controversial. I'm going to argue that the reason that companies like yours, in having to focus on privacy and data and other foundational things like that, is because in the US, we've been relatively late to the game, at least at the federal level, in terms of legislation. We haven't had something like a GDPR. Yes, we've had California and others doing their own privacy type initiatives. So I'm going to argue the legislative response has been slow and late. I'm going to argue that the publisher community has been relatively fragmented. And so if we look back at the publisher community 10, 15 years ago, I think the IAB as an organization was much more publisher focused and was doing a better job at promoting the conversations around industry standards for publishers. And now they've been focused more broadly, but we've ended up in a world where publishers don't have a forum for discussions around standards for privacy and safety, etc. So there's a lot going on, but I guess the question is, how do you think about the role of the different constituent groups? And as part of that, feel free to either comment on the role of legislation or the role of industry standards.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of your observations there, for sure, your perspective. I think a lot of this comes back to the kind of prerequisites that I talked about at the beginning of our conversation, that having a level of awareness of policy and tech related shifts is like ingredient number one to understanding and supporting a healthy ecosystem on an ongoing basis. So that's real. And I think there is, as one is managing one's day-to-day business, they often miss some of the developments and don't prioritize work accordingly. I think I agree with you that regulations and laws are incredibly effective forcing functions. The U.S. is a mess in that regard right now. I think we're up to 13 states that have passed privacy-related legislation, all of which, of course, has its own little secret ingredient, and making it very complex for publishers, very complex for advertisers, and everyone else. Hopefully, we can get to something that's more streamlined over time. So I think there's certainly a role for laws and regulations to play as that impetus to take action. But I think, coming in part from the trade org world, what we tried to do with IAB Tech Lab is create an industry utility that really could bring all of the constituents together as appropriate on different topic areas, right, for technical standards. So things that could be very directly deployed as, part of a solution, part of a platform, and could allow companies to interoperate more effectively together, to spend more time on innovation on their own, right, to adopt the changes that they need to comply with different standards and laws. So I think I certainly, I'm biased, but I think standards can play an enormous role in that, in fostering the change that needs to happen. But people need to get involved, right? And I think the buy side in particular is even less involved than the sell side, than the publishers, in a lot of the real definition of different standards and practices that are tangible, pragmatic, deployable. And I think they need to get more involved. And I think you're right that publishers need advocates. They need convening bodies, right? They need to be treated a little bit differently than the buy side. Don't have a silver bullet answer to that, but if it is certainly beneficial for every constituent to lean in where they can in different trade orgs that exist, and push not just for white papers, but for very tangible standards, right, that can be adopted and can support the sustainability of the ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you. You've been in the industry for 20 plus years. I expect that you've seen a lot of different things over that time, but more particularly over the last 6 months at Think Medium, what has been the biggest surprise?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've both seen quite a bit, but and I can't believe it's been over 20 years. But I think it fits kind of with some of what we've been talking about. That it struck me as we started Think Medium that this should be an incredible moment, right, to start an advisory firm that is geared towards these kind of existential focus areas, that is geared towards supporting companies kind of through the medium term. As we chose medium in the name because it's a lot of companies will focus on the short term, this quarter, how do I hit my numbers, or they'll focus on the big idea that's 5 years out, right, that's going to change everything. And our contention is that so much of your success is really what happens in between, and it doesn't have to hinge on some huge idea. It can be innovating on something pragmatic and innovative on something that is not completely new, right? So it's I think the surprise in a way has been that companies are still kind of moving a little bit slowly and not running with the changes they need to for privacy and data in particular. But also for eco sustainability, that became a hot topic until macroeconomic challenges really got uglier, and suddenly, guess what? There's a lot less talk about sustainability. We see these threads of first it was privacy, then it was DE&I, then it was sustainability, and as soon as people kind of think, oh, okay, that can be kicked down the road, or I need to kick it down the road because I'm focused on this quarter, you see some pullback. And I know that's a little bit of a cynical point of view, but we really want to help companies not kick the can down the road, augment their team. We want to augment their teams in ways that that can allow them to tackle some of these big issues in the shorter term, in the medium term. And it's, it's a little bit surprising that you have a lot of talk and not as much action as maybe we might have expected, given how much is shifting around us.
So you and I are both a little cynical. We've got a little bit into some of the challenges facing our industry. We're both still floating around it. I love the intellectual problems. I love the challenges. I love the people who are attracted to this industry. I assume that you're still in the industry for a similar reason. So help me end on a slightly positive note here, Dennis. What are you most optimistic about over the sort of the next 12 months?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I am like a dog with a bone on this mission of supporting the healthy ecosystem in any way we can. I think you are as well, right? We've grown up in it. We've seen enormous change over 20, I mean, you got to be kidding, over 20 years, right? It's so different now. But you also see some of the same things play over again, right? And I think, the ability to bring experience and adapt, right, and help others adapt is really energizing. So it's, I think in the next 12 months, I do think, especially on the privacy and data front, I think we will see enormous movement. I mean, there are a lot, some of the motivational shifts like the laws that we talked about, but also Google and Privacy Sandbox, all of that. These are real, right? And they're really going to happen. We got to get ready. We got to work on it together. I'm hoping that and optimistic that there'll be good, strong forces. There'll be some good, strong forces there, even if they're not always pleasant forces, to get us working together and really supporting the industry for the next 20 years. So it's an exciting time, to say the least, and it has been for every single year I've been in it. And I suspect you could say the same.
Absolutely. Let's leave it there for today, Dennis. Thank you so much for taking the time. I always learn a lot every time I talk to you, and really appreciate the time you're taking out of your day.
Likewise. Thanks so much. It was great to see you.